today. When I was having the talk with Ugo.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful
It
world.
is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of nature.
Jane and I are here in the Amazon rainforest, and it's been quite amazing. We've been on camping on a remote island in the middle of the river, really experiencing all the souls that exist in nature. One of the things we've talked about before is how in our society we're so disconnected from nature and we're so disconnected from spirituality. And in the times we've spoken, those things are very linked for you and for me. So how are nature and spirituality linked, and how do we evolve to value those things once again?
Well, for me, they're evolved because as soon as I'm out in the forest or some kind of, wild space, especially if I'm alone, then I just feel a strong connection to some great spiritual power. I don't even want to name it.
Mm-hmm.
I could, because I was brought up as a Christian. I would call that spiritual power God, because I don't know what else. But I think young people today, if we catch them young enough, because being out in nature and feeling this spirituality, I think, is really important for the development of a young child. And if they get that, which I did when I was a child, then they'll never forget it, not entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And even, young people,
Yeah.
sort of in their late teens, they
Yeah.
feel something lacking. And there are organizations that take young people, they take them out from the city, right deep into the forest, which at first is a deep shock for the kids, and they cry and they want to run away, but after they've been there 2 or 3 days, they start, because that is our natural habitat. That's how we evolved. We evolved in nature. And so...
As we've disconnected from, our communities and churches and so on, people feel like there's a lack of an anchor. But nature is actually a way of reconnecting. And I feel that especially it's very, very palpable here in the Amazon, where there's such a rich biodiversity, that a tree has a soul, a rock has a soul, a butterfly has a soul, everything, you're surrounded by it. And that's something I want everybody to feel. But today we're behind our phones and we're behind our computers and we're traveling, and it's sometimes it's lost. So this is it's important to have those quiet moments.
It's very important. And, you talk about the soul of everything. I remember sitting in the forest one day alone, and this beautiful fly, I've never seen one before or since. It was all sorts of colours, only about this big, and it settled on my knee. And I looked at it, and my mind immediately said, it's a fly. As soon as you say it's a fly, you take away from the magic. And yet we can't help but do it. That's how we're brought up. Something must have a name. Mm. But I tried very hard in that moment to just think of it as a being, as a part of this natural, beautiful tapestry of life. And so for me it's as though it's one connected whole, me and the wilderness, the wildlife around me. And if I have a soul, then it's a little piece of this amazing harmony, this spirit. Mm-hmm. And if I have this, then so does that little fly and the butterfly and the tree that we're sitting on.
Mm-hmm. As humans, we ascribe the value of different species by what we rate as their intelligence. And you've said in your books, we have a lot of intellect, but we don't have a lot of intelligence. And what can we learn from animals and other species about intelligence? And how do we come to value the different kinds of intelligence that even a fly or a fish or animals that we don't rate in the same way as primates, which we don't treat very well either? How do we reconcile how we try to anthropomorphize all these other animals and their value?
I think for one thing, step number one, you and me, we're animals. This is nothing except our own vanity that says though humans are completely separate. But that's what I was taught at Cambridge. Seriously, it was 1962. And humans at that time were separate from animals. And it was really, it was extraordinary for me. I was young, and at that time I hadn't been to college or university. I was just straight school, earning money, and then getting out to Africa. And so when I came up with the chimpanzees and all the things they could do, the tool using the complex social society, the different ways that mothers raised their children, the male dominance, the tremendous role of personality in all these things, that each chimpanzee was a different individual. And it was those studies that forced science, although they didn't admit it and it didn't happen quickly, to realize that, there's a continuum. And if you rank it on intellect, then we are way up at the top. Mm-hmm. I mean, for heaven's sake, we've gone up to the moon, we've walked on the moon, we've sent little robots to Mars. It's amazing when you think of it. We've worked out secrets of the cosmos that nobody's even seen. And it is incredibly intelligent. And if we could link that intelligence with common sense, some people do, and if we all did, what a different world it would be. If you take a chimpanzee, they are very intelligent. They can do all kinds of things that we can do. Then you come to a baboon. A baboon can't do such intelligent things, but has amazing life skills, tremendously able to blend in with the surroundings. They too have a complex social structure. So you can rank them like that if you want. But now, think of pigs. Pigs, when you talk pig to most people, they probably think of pork or rashers of bacon.
Bacon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And even so, young people today growing up in the city, if you say, where does a rasher of bacon come from, they wouldn't know. They literally wouldn't know.
The disconnectedness from nature.
Yes.
And the cycle of everything, of food, of water.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I happen to know of a pig who I will meet in 4 months. I'm going to meet this pig. She's called not Picasso, the artist, but Pigcasso. And she was rescued from slaughter. She was on her way to become bacon or pork, I don't know. And I think she fell off the truck, or the truck tipped over. Something happened. And this woman has a tiny little sanctuary for rescued farm animals. And the woman who rescued her is an artist. And she noticed that this pig was really interested in her painting. Every time she got out her easel, the pig came to watch. So she set up an easel, and she put a brush with paint in the pig's mouth, and the pig started painting.
Wow.
Her paintings are selling for $5,000. And, so people wouldn't have imagined pigs were intelligent, but actually they are. So we're still learning. It's a fabulous time for young people. But
this is a whole new field opening up,
it's
the different kinds of animal intelligence.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating.
And that gives me hope that we'll value animals as equals on this planet.
Yes.
It's sad that we have to make them intelligent, like in terms of our terms, in order to value them. But
Yep.
It seems like that's the way people will accept that truth.
Yeah, people accept them valued at our kind of intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Biodiversity is visible all around us here in the Amazon, but it's been very hot since we've been here. I think we're both wondering when the rains will come and why they're so late, and why these paths that we've been going on were riverbeds and streams, and it's been so hot. Perhaps the animals are staying very still in the forest. So this is a crisis, biodiversity. And we're here in the Amazon where we should be seeing animals everywhere, but the heat is punishing. What can we do to? What are the things that you've seen that work regarding biodiversity and stemming that loss in the face of climate change, where you have these external conditions that make it very hard for wild animals?
Yeah, they make it hard for wild animals and us.
Yeah.
Even though, some of us can seek refuge in air conditioning, everybody can't. You read about poor people in some countries. They are suffering from climate change, which is linked to biodiversity loss. The two go hand in hand. And we've just carried on regardless. we've decided that we can industrialize everywhere without regard to the amount of natural resources. We're using up some natural resources faster than nature can replenish them without a good deal of help. And, you know, we need a change in the way of thinking. We need a change in mindset. So, you know, the very wealthy have got to learn to come down a little bit and not always fly around in private jets, because that uses up an awful lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. And the ordinary person, you know, just leading a sort of ordinary kind of life, they need to think, do I really need this? And people buy without thinking, can I use it? So again, it's a change of mindset and understanding that all of this is linked. Right now, the big guys up there, you know, the political leaders, they're all in terms of climate change. They're not linking it at all to biodiversity loss. And the shrinking of the forests, which of course is causing huge amounts of CO2 to go up into the atmosphere. And they're not thinking about that. They're downplaying that. And so they can go on using the forest as long as they pay for the use. And paying for the use doesn't help anything. You know, so they can just go on doing it.
The credits and the offsets and these things constructed from the financial system that don't apply to nature.
Not at all. They literally don't.
No.
And so, you know, I have to be really careful because I'm meeting people like this. And how to talk to them without making them feel deeply embarrassed. Because somebody who's deeply embarrassed, they don't want to change. They feel they want to continue to believe they're right, even though it's not true. So it's how you address the issue very carefully, telling stories, which is what I like to do. There was one lovely story which I was told by a CO2. I mean, CO2. No, what do I mean? CEO, that's right. Too much CTO. Okay, this was a CEO of a big company in Singapore, international. And he said, Jane, it was after my talk, he said, I have been trying to be more environmentally conscientious for the last 8 years. And he said there were 3 reasons. First of all, I understood that we're on a planet of natural resources and that we're using them up in some places too fast. Secondly, consumer pressure. People are beginning to understand, I don't want to buy that if it's hurt the environment or being cruel to animals.
And that choice is very powerful. If people make the right choices, the right conscientious products become the dominant products. That's the hope. That's how we can use capitalism to make change.
Absolutely. And it's beginning to happen. So like this guy, he realized.
Yeah.
But he said what tipped the balance for me was my little girl of 10. She came back from school one day and she said, Daddy, they've told me that what you're doing is hurting the planet. It's not true, is it, Daddy? Because it's my planet. He said that went straight to the heart. So I tell that story a lot because I find, although it went straight to his heart, he told me, and I share, and it goes to their heart.
And that's, I think, the only way for people to really engage and take action and be released from hopelessness is it has to touch them in the heart. I'd love to involve more business people and tech people in this fight. And I love that story about the CEO and that it's about the next generation. There's an entrepreneurialness that's necessary in this moment, in this decade of action, as many are saying. And I see that with what you're doing and with what other NGOs are doing and what Indigenous people are doing. It's very a startup mentality, you know, and it's one that we have to take urgently. But of course, the other reason for hope is the youth, as you touched on, that daughter. And Roots and Shoots has been one of your driving forces for hope. Talk to me about why youth are going to be the solution or a big part of the solution.
Because they are now much more aware. There's much more emphasis on climate change, loss of biodiversity, and they know that the way we're living is really bad for their future.
It's plainly obvious.
Yeah. But a while back when I began children weren't learning that sort of thing in school. And their parents said, no, I don't want to worry him. I'll go on doing all these things, but I don't want to worry my child that it might hurt his future. It was kind of, I don't know what's wrong with us, that we can think in ways that are so conflicting. But anyway, it was 1991. By that time, I'd been going around the world talking different places. And I was noticing that many children were depressed because they were beginning to understand what was happening to the world.
Eco-grief.
Yes, eco-grief. Perhaps not quite that bad with children, but it was certainly growing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little group of Tanzanian kids. I'd been round their schools. It was an anniversary. And I think it was, 12, like the 12 apostles. 12 of them came from 8 different schools to talk to me. And in those days, there was no proper roads in Dar es Salaam, but they got here somehow to my house. And they told me all the things that were worrying them, all that was going wrong, and could I fix them? I said, look, I love Tanzania. I'm not Tanzanian. You have a Tanzanian government, but let's talk about it. I said, go and find out which of your friends feel like you do, and we'll have a meeting. So we had a meeting of 30 young people. They were high school students, 18, 19, even 20, 21 back then, because there were so few schools. There was delay in getting in. And we came up with the idea. We didn't have the name Roots and Shoots right away. They were called Jane Goodall's Young Naturalists, I think. And I knew that was wrong, but anyway, to start with.
I like that one too.
I suppose that's what they were.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we talked about it. And right there, very first meeting, we decided on the 3 pillars for Roots and Shoots. First of all, people. Second, non-human animals. And third, environment. So each group would tackle all 3 because they are interlinked.
Holistic.
That was the key.
Yeah, connected.
And it didn't mean every member had to do all 3, but they had to gather and talk about all 3 when they'd done them. That was the idea. And it caught on, and it started spreading through Tanzania. And so I thought, well, if it works so well in Tanzania, what about elsewhere? So I can't remember who was putting on this big conference in New York for young people. And I said, well, can I bring some of my Roots and Shoots members? Because by then we were in some other countries. And they ummed and ahed and said, oh yes, all right. It was Albert Schweitzer conference. And so I had 5 from Tanzania, because that's where we began, 2 from the UK, 2 from the US, and 2 from Congo. That's where we were back then. And it was such a success. You know, they came up with amazing projects, and all of it was interlinked. So from that point on, it grew.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be in 70 countries very soon. Mm-hmm. And you're across nearly 70 countries with
70,
Roots.
yes.
Yeah.
I think we're 70 now if we count this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're excited to work with you at Age of Union on our Roots and Shoots projects here in the Amazon, but that's to be announced. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jane. It's been amazing to chat with you in this beautiful place.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Dax.
you.